Well, we welcome now our Bloomberg television audience and Bloomberg radio listeners. Joining me now at the World Economic Forum in Davos is Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger. Pat, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Haslina.
The world has been preoccupied with supply chain disruptions as well as chip shortages. I mean, analysts out there saying perhaps there is light at the end of the tunnel. They say, you know what, maybe there'll be an easing by the second half of this year, but you're not so upbeat. You say not until perhaps 2024.
Yeah, no, we definitely think that the supply-demand balance is 2024. And a year ago I said 2023. Since then we've seen a number of equipment supply chains move out. So our equipment coming into the fabs that we're building, that has moved out. So overall 2024 until we start to see a reasonable balancing of semiconductor supply chain.
So will it get worse from here before it gets better? Because when you take a look at the ports in China, for instance, we're talking about 50, 60 ships just waiting to unload. And of course, that's causing a lot of headaches.
Oh, yeah, the supply chain issues that we've seen in China, but it comes on the back of many other supply chain issues. So we're already sort of beaten down, and so we have to work through it. And maybe the softening of the economy, a little bit of consumer softness, gives us just a little bit of breath. But we're still out to 2024, and obviously the Shanghai ports have created a bit more turbulence that we're managing through near term.
We talk about a slowdown. In fact, a global slowdown. Although we've seen a pushback from Kristalina Georgieva saying we're not looking at a global recession, but definitely a slowdown. Would that mean demand destruction? What assumptions are you making?
Well, we definitely see a bit of softening on the consumer side. Right?
How much softening? I mean, can you give a number to that?
As you saw in our earnings, we saw, there was a meaningful, a number of percentage points softer there. We originally were expecting the PC industry to be up a couple of points this year. Now it's sort of flattish, maybe down 1 point. So, a meaningful swing. But on the business side, the enterprise and commercial side, no change, right? Continuing to have real strength in those areas of the market. And I think with, inflation concerns, tightening of monetary policy, these continuing supply chain challenges, things are probably going to be a little bit choppy for a couple of quarters.
You're also reviewing where you produce your chips. In fact, you're making Europe as well as the US a priority, and perhaps that message is resonating even more given what we're seeing in China. How is that coming along?
Well, we are all in on the rebuilding on what we've called the geographically balanced resilient supply chain, where this industry was 80% in US and Europe 30 years ago. Now it's 80% manufactured in Asia. What happened? And it was never, as I was in Washington last week, and I joked to some of the congressional leaders, we never voted to get rid of this industry, but those countries voted to get this industry, and they put strong packages in place to attract this industry there. And now we see that, we are way too dependent on too few places in the world. And Haslina, what aspect of your life is not becoming more digital? Everything's becoming digital, right? My consumer, my healthcare, my transportation, how I work, how I live. And everything digital runs on semiconductors. As I say, where the oil reserves are define geopolitics for the last 5 decades. Where the fabs are is more important for the next several decades. Let's build them where we want them and do it in a way that we have more resilience to the supply chain.
It is all great that you want to make the US and Europe a priority, but it's also about scaling and scaling quickly. How soon can you get there?
Well, we've announced the Ohio site, expansions in Arizona. In Europe, we announced our expansion in Germany, new research in France, expansions continuing in Ireland. And what we're really now anxious to see is that the US and the EU CHIPS Act get completed that allows us to make those good economic investments. Because part of the challenge is that we're competing now with countries that have very actively incented those investments in Asia. And these investments, they have to be competitive worldwide, or I can't compete for the worldwide market. So, and that's what we're looking for, the EU leaders as well as the US congressional leaders, get these things done so we can go faster.
Just for our radio listeners, we're speaking to Pat Gelsinger, Intel CEO here in Davos. Pat, I mean, we talk about how we want to ramp up that production in the US and Europe, but what kind of government support are you seeing, are you getting? And is it enough?
Well, the U.S. CHIPS Act, $52 billion, the European CHIPS Act, 45 billion euros. And as we've looked at those programs and we've helped to shape them, they make us competitive in the world. We feel very good that these are very good steps forward. And it's against what I call the moonshot. And by the end of the decade, our objective is that we go from 80-20, 80% Asia, 20% US and Europe, to 50-50. Right, 30% US, 20% in Europe, 50% in Asia. That is the goal that we are driving these for. And we think these are great steps forward. And if they are being successful, we can drive toward that 2030 goal of 50-50.
We've heard from Gina Raimondo urging for manufacturing data. Is that a game changer? I mean, how will it help solve the supply chain disruptions?
She's argued for and has, put some steps in place to help with supply chain transparency. And, we're supportive of the general idea of more visibility there. But I say, I don't think that's the solution. I think that helps a bit, but we think fundamentally we have to build more resilient supply chains. We have to do that with the fabs, and then we have to attract more of the other aspects of the system supply chain, materials, the gases and others that go into it. We need balance across US, Europe, and Asia. That is the fundamental answer to accomplishing what we see as this resilient supply chain of the future.
Pat, I'd like your reaction to what we reported on Bloomberg TV today, that perhaps Broadcom is looking at acquiring VMware. Your thoughts on that? Will this be the start of more consolidation within the industry?
Well, I woke up to the news a little bit startled as well, like everybody else. I had put 8 years of my life, my soul, into VMware, so a bit startled in reading that. And I would say, hey, if it helps VMware be a more compelling, innovative growth story, then it's good. If not, then it's not good. And to me, it really is, they play a certain place in the ecosystem of the industry, hybrid cloud strategy. That's super important for the future, and I want to make sure that they continue to do that for a long time to come.
On the surface right now, is it good? Yeah, Broadcom acquiring VMware. Will it be good? I mean, what's your own take? I mean, you have inside
sort of mixed. Sort of mixed, in the current thinking. And obviously, it was surprising news today. And I'm, like I say, we have to make sure VMware is a great innovation engine for the future.
Do you see further consolidation within the industry? I mean, we're seeing an uptick in terms of tech consolidation, I think, in excess of 40% for the year already.
Yeah, well, obviously, with the correction and multiples that we've seen, I think somewhat we were overheated. Right, with some of these high multiple stocks, and as that comes back down to earth a little bit, yeah, I think there will be consolidation. We've done several acquisitions this year, and I don't think any of that's bad in that sense, because there's an extraordinary flow of new IPOs and new offerings into the market. I hope to get my Mobileye IPO done this year as well. So I think it always is this normal cycle of acquisitions, consolidation, and new birth. This is an exciting industry.
Just one final question before we let you go. Lots of headwinds for companies, for governments, inflation, supply chain disruptions. For you, as you look ahead in the next 12 months, what's the biggest one? What's the biggest risk?
Well, I think overall this economic uncertainty, right, creates some of these headwinds with our customers and what they're forecasting. But, I'd say two responses that we're saying. I'm investing for a decade, right? And hey, some near-term up and down, that isn't what we're focused on. We have to go manage the biggest business prudently in the near term, but we are making a 10-year cycle of investment. Also, the core of why we're here at Davos is public-private partnership. Governments and companies coming together to drive industry policy that allows us to compete for the long term, geographically balanced, resilient supply chains.